Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Sales B12, which is the one dose of sales you don't want to miss. I'm Caryn Kopp, and I'm here with Jack Daly, who is a globally known guru in sales, all things sales and sales training. And we, of course, Kopp Consulting, we do the door opener service where we get our clients in the door with their prospects for the first meeting. So today we're talking about what leaders can do to help sellers get more prospect meetings, and not just more meetings, but more of the right meetings too. So Jack, this is one of the most urgent sales challenges that leaders are talking about right now, what they can do to help their people get more meetings. So first of all, why is it happening? Before we get into what they could do, maybe share, what do you think is going on? Why are sellers not getting more meetings?
Here's my take on this. And I'm doing it from a standpoint of not 30 years of teaching sales, but more a personal reflection as me being the prospect. And that is, I'm so weary. I'm so tired of being bombarded and attacked that even if someone has an offering that really, really would be good for me, I don't even want to respond to that. I don't even want to look at them anymore. And and some of it has to do with the tone, the tenure of the outreach.
Hmm.
It's too much selling. I get beat up all day long with LinkedIn messages, and they're generic in nature. And it's a little bit about what my pain might be or where my pleasure might be, but it's more about them. And I look, I'm a small company. I can just imagine what it's like if you're a larger enterprise, uh, because I'm probably averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 to 100 unsolicited um, messages in some format. Uh, and and I like I'm done. I don't want to go there anymore. Um, but I can also tell you that even with all that attitude I just expressed, you can get in.
Yeah.
Because right prior to this, you and I catching up here today, to do this recording, I talked to somebody that was a complete stranger that outreached to me by way of LinkedIn. And so somehow through that, the meeting took place.
Well,
Um,
that's awesome. I tell people this is possible. You can get meetings with people you don't know as long as you do it right. But there are so few people who actually do it right. They do it more like the ones that you experienced before. So if the outreach is done well, you actually rise so far above the competition because the competition is not taking the time to really research the prospects and say something meaningful and then hang in there without being frustrated until the prospect is ready. What was it about that outreach, if you can think back, that caused you to say yes to that
oh,
meeting?
so easy. So look, the reason you and I get along so well is our brains run on the similar track. It's like
Yeah,
a railroad track has got two rails. I feel like you're one and I'm the other, and we're just taking the train to its destination.
that's right.
Here's what you just opened up, door opener. Is that you said people aren't taking the time to do their homework.
Right.
And that is the differential. That therein lies the answer. Now, if I went back 15 years ago in selling, to do homework back then was so difficult. I mean, it you really had to work very diligently, and it took a long time to get what you could get instantly today. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, I'm so public with LinkedIn and Facebook and social media in all shapes and sizes. If you wanted to know anything about Jack Daly, I mean, you would be inundated with knowledge about me.
Right.
So imagine this guy reaching out to me that says that he's an endurance athlete and gave me some examples of some races and stuff that he's been doing, that he's been in the selling business for 25 years, and that he is a four-time cancer survivor, and has a recent book that he's got, and wanted to know if there was a way that we might be able to find a way to collaborate. Now, I've done 15 Ironmans and 100 marathons, and I'm a two-time cancer survivor, and I lost my wife to cancer, and my daughter is a survivor of cancer. And he was a recovering alcoholic, and my son is a recovering drug addict. The overlap, and his reach out indicated that he did all that homework and in effect knew who I was. And I'm going, on any one of those would have been a hook, but the grouping was, I moved from, I actually want to talk to this guy. Like,
Right.
like I
And
want
you
to,
know what?
I want to get to know him.
Yeah. And so what's really interesting is aside from the research, which he did the thinking to make the connection. And then there's the writing or the phone call where he's thinking about what words should I be using, in what order. I maybe not this phrase, let me do this phrase. And I had this conversation with a client recently about the time it takes to craft the right message, the time it takes to research, not just to find out that you were an author, but what was it that made you write that book? And how is it that that would make talking to him a good idea for you? That's thinking. And then to put that into the sentences that make sense, he has to be ready. If he called you, he would have to be ready not just to leave a voicemail, which takes 30 seconds, but to have a live dialogue that produces an outcome. And that thinking takes time. It also produces meetings like the one that you just said yes to. Whereas people who are not taking that time, not thinking about which phrase is going to be most impactful, they may still execute the activity, but they don't get the result. And I was trying to explain to this person why taking that time is so important. And it was very hard for that person who considers himself so experienced in sales. It was really hard for him to grasp how much time it takes to make sure that that outreach is going to produce that result. So as we're talking about leaders today, one of the things that leaders should know is that good outreach and making these relationships is a slow dance. And if you're going to come in and input, you have to have X number of activities. You may have X number of crappy activities that don't lead to the result. You need to give your best sellers the opportunity to do this process correctly so that they could serve up the right kind of meeting. What's your feel about that?
Well, again, we're side by side railroad
Right.
tracks, right? Um, Look, too many sellers calling on too many people that don't deserve to be called on. Too many sellers calling on people and touching them in too often and too frequent without the value, without doing the homework, all of that type of thing. And and by the way, forget about the sellers. Now let's go to the leaders. Let's go to the managers of those people. Um, am I a fan of KPIs? Yes. Am I a fan of get things that get measured, get done? Yes. But you can't just measure activity without talking about the quality of that activity. You see, the
Exactly.
managers too often are saying, "Oh, well, I've got 10 sellers and 8 of them are doing 50 outreaches a day through whatever mechanism, and these two guys are doing 15 a day. So they're the poor performers. They're not going to generate the business, but the leaders don't have a tendency, they're not going and saying, what's the quality of the outreach? What was
Right.
the messaging that took place? Nobody's inspecting that. And quite frankly, I'm all about the sales playbook, best practices and all of that. And so, well, did we provide the guidance to our sellers on what the content should be? Did we provide the training to the sellers on, hey, this is how you can go about getting the research, and here's how you go about doing that? Did we provide as leaders the opportunity to show them how to properly craft the outreach, what words to use,
Right.
the things that you're talking about? So, I've said this my whole life. The person with the best product at the best price isn't very often the guy that wins the deal. The guy, and that's male or female, I'm a Philly guy, the guy that wins the deal is very often the one who is best prepared.
That's right. And the preparation takes time, and the leaders sometimes don't value the time that it takes to have exceptional preparation. I would rather have fewer meetings that were spot on great because those are going to close sooner than lots of meetings where only a small percentage of them was really meaningful. So,
Hey, Caryn, look, I'm a lot older than you, but both of us are older than a lot of the leaders and the sellers that we work with. Okay. Um, uh, Hopefully I'm not offending you by saying neither one of us are called spring chickens at this stage. But
where are you going with this?
here's where I'm going. Um, I tend to find younger people being media gratification people. They
Yeah.
want things now, and doing the proper preparation doesn't give them the immediate hit. I'd rather just throw stuff out there and hope that I'm going to get somebody to bite on the hook, right?
Right. And that's not the way it works. I mean, I tell people all the time, the buyers are going to buy when the buyers are ready, not when you're ready as the salesperson. And your job is to create the relationship and be there with value so that when the decision is on the table, that you're going to be one of the people who's considered. So what would you say to these leaders? What are some tips that you can give to the leaders on how they can help their sellers sell more or get more of these meetings? Let's focus there. Because one of the things that I know is that the managers who are in place, the leaders who are there, they haven't done the job of getting meetings, and certainly not recently. And I can tell you, based on our 25 years in business, that getting in the door has changed in the last 2 to 3 years. So if the leader has not been in a position to actually do this job himself or herself, they may just be ill-equipped to help their people to do better. What would you say to
Yeah,
these
yeah.
people?
So we've done a string of B12s previously, and
Yes.
at the risk of being repetitive or redundant, sports teams are run better than most businesses. That's a Jackism, okay? And there's three reasons that they're better run than most businesses. One, they have a playbook. Two, they practice the playbook. And three, the coach is on the field belly to belly with the players. So now let's take a look at it from a business standpoint. Do you have a playbook, what I call best practices, identified scripts and words and the usage and how you employ those things? That's what a sales playbook is. Second, do you have scheduled practice where your people are actually practicing and you, the leader, are the leader of the pack, making sure that the practice is going at the high level, not just going through the motions? And three, are you belly to belly with your salespeople? And belly to belly for me means there's three types of calls that a leader can make with the sellers. They can do joint calls, which of the three, that's the one I see most frequent. But there's training calls and there's coaching calls. And so the training call is where I, the leader, am on the call showing the seller how to go about this. The coaching call is where I'm listening in on the seller and letting that go and seeing how they do without me. And the joint call is where we equally participate. Well, to me, joint training coaching, all three of those need to be done on a regular basis. And our metric is a minimum of 4 hours a month just doing joint training and coaching calls. So if you have 10 sellers that you're responsible for as a leader, that's 40 hours a month on just that belly to belly thing. But if I went to successful coaches in sports and said, I expect you to do the joint training like in 4 hours a month with each of the players, if I get left off of the field, we just don't prepare. That's the bottom line.
So I'm going to throw in one additional variable in here as we close out this segment, is that because getting in the door with prospects has changed in the last 2 to 3 years, and there could be the possibility that the person who is the coach, the manager who should be the coach, hasn't done this work in a long time. So they may not be equipped to come up with the right recipe. They may not be equipped to be the coach unless they get some training too. So what might be helpful is to bring in a company like ours and let us set this up. Are the prospects on the list the exact right prospects that represent shorter sales cycles? Are you using language that's meaningful to that group of people, because the person with the best words wins? When was the last time you updated the answers for the objections that keep you from getting in the door? Setting this up properly, and then we can door open parallel to a sales team and get the recipe right, train the manager so the manager can continue coaching the sellers to get more meetings. Because if the manager hasn't done this in a while, the manager may not be coaching the salespeople on the tactics that are going to be successful in getting the door open sooner with the exact right prospect.
Pre-pandemic compared to now, your company, the door opener, has experienced growth of over 400%. And the reason that you've grown by 400% is the issue that you just articulated, that people haven't figured out, now that we were out of the field and it working out of our houses, the world has changed. And if all you know is the former, then you're going to have difficulty. And the reason your company's grown by 400+% is because you have so many clients now that are saying, holy crap, we just don't know what to say and do. And so I'd rather go find somebody that's already knows how to do that, rather than try to kind of like shoot with the bandana over my eyes, right? So and look, let me bring one more thing out before we close, because I know we're going into overtime. The leaders are already busy. They have a full calendar now. And what we're suggesting is you need to do more things. So you're going to need to figure out what are the things that you're currently working on that you're going to need to push away. And, I'm infamous for saying, if you don't have an assistant, you are one. So they're compared to a lot of other speakers, I get to do a tremendous amount of personal travel and lifestyle type stuff. And the other speakers are going, I don't know how he can run a business that's so successful and still do that. Well, I have a team of assistants that, while I'm away, are doing this work. It's not that it's not important, but they now do it better than I would be able to do it if I were doing it myself. So leaders have to learn how to let things go and prioritize the preparation things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So we're glad that everybody tuned in for this episode of Sales B12. Check out all the other episodes, and there will be more in the future coming up as well. Thanks, Jack.
Hey, Caryn. Awesome.